Well, hi once again. I am Michael Hinkson, your host on Unstoppable Mindset, where inclusion, diversity, and the unexpected meet, and anything else that might come along. Oh, I guess that comes under unexpected. Thanks for listening to us wherever you happen to be today. This is all for you to help you and others realize that we can be more unstoppable than we think we can. And our guest today, Sabin Becker, is as close to demonstrating unstoppability as it gets. She's German born, and but she'll not do German for us too much, I hope. But oh, good. But she was born with very short arms, and we're going to talk about that. She's been a keynote speaker. She's been on Oprah. She's been on PBS. Are we jealous or what? And after a near-death experience, she developed a program called PUSH, Perseverance Until Success Happens. That I'm really interested in. And I hope all of you will be as well. And, we'll see where all the questions take us today. As usual, it's all about having a conversation. So, Sabin, welcome to Unstoppable Mindset. We're glad you're here.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for having me at the Unstoppable Mindset. This is awesome to be here. I'm so excited. And we're going to have a great conversation.
Oh, I hope so. Well, why don't we start as often people say at the beginning? Why don't you tell us a little bit about you as you were growing up? You were born in Germany, and as I said, and one of the things you told me, with very short arms. What does that mean? Short arms?
Yeah,
short
excellent.
Compared to what?
Short compared to what? Great question, Michael. Like you said, I was born in Germany in the early 1960s. And as you already said, I was born with short arms. Now, what does that mean? My arms are not fully developed. They're maybe, I don't know, I still have problems with in inches in America. They're maybe
you can do centimeters.
I get confused too. So my arms. So what does short mean? I think that's a good question. About 6 to 8 inches, and I only have 2 fingers at each hand.
Okay.
So, and the reason why that happened is because in the late 1950s, early 1960s, specifically in Germany, but also in Great Britain and Australia and some other countries, but Germany, Great Britain, Australia were the hardest hit. The pharmaceutical complex Grünenthal decided to develop a medication which called thalidomide. And they told pregnant women, or the doctors told pregnant women, it would be okay to take that medication in the beginning of their pregnancy. It would not harm the fetus. And of course, history knows it. It turned out to be the worst pharmaceutical disaster in history, because 20,000 babies. Imagine that number. That's humongous number of babies. 20,000 babies were born with abbreviated arms. Some were even born with abbreviated legs. And, I do have completely normal legs. Others were born with disabilities. And 60%, Michael, 60% of the thalidomide babies never saw their first birthday. So it was truly it is considered the worst catastrophe pharmaceutical catastrophe in history. And
and thalidomide was very visible here too. I remember it growing up and hearing all about it and all the controversies. So
yeah, I think so. I mean, I wasn't around quite yet in America, but what happened here in America, which makes America really very unique, is the Surgeon General, Dr. Frances Kelsey. She saw what happened overseas, and she did not allow the medication thalidomide here in this country. And that's why, thankfully, America has not had that many thalidomide-affected children. Most of the children are like me. They are coming from a different country. They were born in, Germany, Great Britain, and maybe to American parents or They immigrated here to this country like I did too. So that it's very rare to find. I mean, they are there. Especially what I hear from my thalidomide friends, their parents were overseas in the military, and that's how the mother got exposed to the thalidomide drug.
What was it supposed to accomplish? What was thalidomide supposed to be?
Well, it was being said, number one, it was being said it is as safe as a sugar pill, and it will help the pregnant woman to cope with anxiety, insomnia, and especially morning sickness. And you know why that was so popular? I just understood these last years because I have done a lot of research. Why this baby became so popular in Europe? Because people were still very anxious because of World War II.
Yeah.
World War II, just 10, 12 years ago, people still remembered the trauma of a world war. So it was just a society that still dealt with PTSD. Yeah. And there came the wonder drug, the sugar pill, that was going to take everything away, just take away the anxiety, take away the insomnia. And that's why so many people went for it. And these poor mothers never knew that it would harm their fetus.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, so you were born, and so how did it go for you growing up?
Well, believe it or not, it's really crazy. Believe it or not, I really never realized that I was disabled because I was never treated as a person or a child at the time with a disability. My parents were very strict with me, and they were strict with my brother too. We had the same chores in the household. I had to vacuum clean. My brother had to vacuum clean. I had to do the dishes. My brother had to do the dishes. And that was unheard of in the mid 60s, towards the end of the 60s in Germany. Mm-hmm. Because in general, German society still thought of people with disability as less. Again, that's kind of the leftovers from the war, because that's a terrible story with people of disabilities during World War II. I don't want to get into it, but the idea was still there. People with disabilities are less. But my parents, they fought that, and they fought it very successfully. And they also fought for that I had a physical and occupational therapist who was able to teach me how to use my feet as my hands. So as a tiny little kid, maybe, I don't really remember, three years maybe old, as a tiny kid, I learned over many years how to use my feet as my hands, which included getting dressed, brushing my hair, at the time drawing little pictures. Then later on, when I was old enough to write, writing with my left foot, everything you and your listeners and the viewers do, I do with my feet. And that even today includes driving a non-modified car. So I grew up not having any notion of that I was different. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't think of myself as different. The kids I played with didn't think I was different. Sometimes, oh, what happened to your arms? But then I said, oh, I was born this way. And the kids, okay, let's play. It was not a big affair. It was not, I had my little roller skates. I had skis. Oh, gosh, what did I do as a kid? I did so many. I even climbed a tree. Believe it or not, with tiny little hands, I hung on somehow. I didn't know how I did it, but I distinctly remember that cherry tree I climbed up on. I did everything like other kids.
You're saying you are not really a great fan of trying to climb a tree today. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, maybe not.
Not
It's
so
not
much.
the
Not
it's
the
not really
same.
smartest thing to do. But
No, but
I was fearless, Michael.
now, was
I
your
was
brother a
just
thalidomide baby?
no. He was born 3 years later,
Mm.
and the German government forced Grünenthal, the manufacturer of thalidomide, forced Grünenthal to take Grünenthal off the market.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in November 1961. And I was born in January of 1962. So had they done this a year before that,
Yeah.
I would today have regular arms. It was just they knew Grünenthal knew about it, and that's the other tragedy
of course, the big
it.
issue. Yeah,
that's the big issue, and they wanted to make as much profit as possible till they finally were caught. And hey, it has to be pulled out of the market, and so many kids like myself, we could have been saved from real hardship, because I make it sound a little bit easy, but I think for my parents it was extraordinarily difficult to raise a child with such a severe disability and deal with the society, the mental attitude of society at the time, specifically in Germany. I don't talk about America at all, but specifically in Germany, and all the obstacles they had to jump over, because there was no support, there was no help for those parents. They just had to organize themselves and basically look what they are going to do. And many parents, they were so frustrated and just depressed. Some parents, and they gave their children up. So they were raised in homes for the disabled, because it was a true feat to raise a child with such an unusual disability.
But you bring up some really interesting points, and with my life, there are a lot of similarities. First of all, the way our parents treated us and the view that they took of us as human beings, we were not considered less.
No.
I won't say that my parents wouldn't say that I was different, or would. They knew I was blind, but I was supposed to, according to doctors, be put in a home because no blind child could ever grow up to do anything. And my parents rejected that. And they also brought me up as you. That is, we were supposed to do all the chores and things like that. And my brother, who was 2 years older and sighted, and I were treated the same as it should be. And so I never even really thought much about being blind as being different. I just thought it's the way I am. And I knew that other kids weren't blind, but it goes back to what our parents decided. And that set the tone, because like you, there was no bitterness. And we grew up with primarily kids and in environments where we were not treated as less. And I had some teachers that helped along the way too, just because of things that I was required to do in class that other kids weren't required to do. Like when we had spelling tests, I would say the words out loud when the tests were being graded. So my test was spelling the words out loud, which I love to say also got me prepared for being able to do public speaking. But you know, I was not really viewed as less or different. I know I didn't necessarily appear in all the same social environments as other kids. I didn't go to a lot of the dances and things like that when we were in high school and all that. But by the same token, I wasn't viewed as an obstacle or less than other kids. And I think that's the way it ought to be. I think that the schools where I grew up eventually started getting materials in and a teacher to help with for me learning Braille and other things like that. But it's all part of really having a mindset that says we're all people that have gifts and we shouldn't be diminished because our gifts are different than others.
I love that we have all gifts, absolutely, and they're different. And you and I, we have talked before this podcast, and we definitely have a lot of similarities in our lives. And I'm so glad to see you here, to you interview me, and it's such an incredible to somebody like-minded mind, if that's a word even. Oh my gosh, my English sometimes.
Nah, you're absolutely doing fine. There's no problem at all. So you went to school. Did you go to college in Germany?
No. What I did, I graduated high school in Germany, and then again, that was a feat because normally disabled children were put in Sonderschulen, which means special schools, special schools. That's it, the translation. And my parents did that for a couple of years because they just didn't know any different. But then my mother said, you know what? I'm not going to accept that because I do not want to have less for my daughter because it was less. I just hate it. There were all kinds of disabilities. I was thrown into classes with people who had learning disabilities. It just didn't work for me. And so my mother realized that, and she said, I'm not going to accept that Sabine is going to go to a regular school. Oh, I went to a regular elementary school in the 4th grade. So I did stay for 3 years. Because my 4th grade was my first year in a regular mainstream school, because we didn't have the integration we have today. It just was unheard of. And then I continued to high school, and it was a Catholic high school in Germany. And I remember the nuns, the principal, a nun, what is it called? The head, oh my
Mother
goodness.
Superior?
Yes, Mother Superior. She told me, Sabine, you want to go to school here, you're going to do everything like everybody else. We will not make exceptions. And I said, sure, of course. So I had to do PE, I had to do a sewing, I had to learn how to sew with my feet. And it just, and what was that called? Household management. I don't even know what those classes were. And
Home
of
economics
course,
and all
yes, thank you. I knew you call it different here in America, but that's what I had to do. And what that taught me again, and it reinforced, I was not different from anybody else. I might have to do things differently, but I did it. And that mindset has followed me throughout my life.
And that's as it should be. It doesn't mean that you won't need some tools to allow you to do the same things that other people do, which means, as you said, you might do them differently, but it doesn't mean you can't do them. And I think that that's one of the key points that so many people miss about the whole issue of disabilities. First of all, disability doesn't mean that we're not able. It doesn't mean that, and it shouldn't mean that. No. And we've got to get away from that kind of an attitude and mindset. But what it does mean is that we're different, but so is everyone else. There are a lot of people who are left-handed. There are people who are bald, who don't have hair. They lose it or whatever. That makes them different, and they have to accommodate that in some ways. But the reality is we're all different, and there's nothing wrong with that. One of my favorite speeches by the founder of the National Federation of the Blind, Dr. Jacobus Timbrook, who is a blind constitutional law scholar, actually not a speech, but an article, is called A Preference for Equality. And one of the things that he said is, in the article, essentially, that equality doesn't mean you do things exactly the same way. It means that you get what you need to be able to accomplish the same task. But equality doesn't mean doing it the same way. Equality means that you have the tools that you need to have to do it. And I think all too often people say, well, if you want equality, then you got to be able to sit down and use the same tools everybody else does. Wrong answer. That is not what it should mean, and that's not what it does mean. I remember being in kindergarten in Palmdale. I had, when I grew up there, we had moved from Chicago when I was 5. And I remember my parents having a very strong, viciously furious argument with the school principal who wanted me to be sent to the school for the blind in Northern California. And my parents said, absolutely not. We want him to go to a regular public school. Now, would I have been able to thrive at the school for the blind? Yes. At that time, the academic standards were good. But my parents said, there's no reason that he can't go here, and we're not going to allow it. And they were shouting at each other. I remember it. But they prevailed, and I went to public school. And there were some challenges for a while until Braille came along for me to be able to use, because the school didn't know how to get it. But we need to all recognize that in reality, just because we do things differently, it doesn't mean we can't do them.
Exactly. And that's something I've ran into in my life on many times, because we know that, and many of your listeners, viewers know that, but not everybody knows that. Sometimes, I'm sure you too, you just meet people who just assume because you're different, I'm different, that we can't do something. And that is something I've been literally fighting all my life. I've tried to educate, because I was a social worker, a psychologist, before I started my public speaking. And I tried to educate, and we have made many strides since I have been a kid, especially. Goodness, it's a world of difference. But there still needs to be education, that we just might need different tools, but we still can accomplish everything everybody else can.
So what did you do after high school?
After high school, I was a free spirit, and I decided, and I'm still today. After high school, I just decided that I will move to Paris, France. And why Paris, France? Because I thought I could be just the new Picasso. I could be the new Van Gogh. I could be whatever. It's because I loved art. I still love art to this day. I learned how to draw with my feet, and if I might say so myself, it was good. I mean, it was not Picasso, but I just enjoyed it, and I wanted to study art. But guess what? My parents said no. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Kind of a, starving artist type thing.
Yeah.
But I still went to Paris. But in the end, I decided against studying art. I studied social work and then psychology. And that probably was a good idea, because otherwise I might be a starving artist today.
Well, you could have taken up cooking, and met
which
Julia
I did.
Childs.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, there were so many routes I could have gone, but I had a love for art. I still have a love for art to this day. But earning a living, they are foot artists, and they do okay. I think what I know of some of them, they do okay. But I think it was a good route, because the other thing I'm very passionate about is helping others, helping people to use their adversity and turn them into really meaningful opportunities. And because that's what I had to do, and I came up with a PUSH, PUSH, survival guide. PUSH stands for, you already said it earlier, persevere until success happens. And I came up with it after my life-altering, near-death experience.
Tell us about that, if you would.
Yeah, my goodness, yeah. This is jumping a lot of ahead, because there were so many things still between my college education and my life-altering event. Can I just say, I have a son. Nicola was born in 1983. And I think that's what I'm so proud of. My beautiful son grew up in a beautiful young man who's almost 40 years old today. And that was a tough time, because again, I had no clue what do I do with this the 10-pound baby or 8 pounds? I don't know what his birth weight. What do you do when you do? Well, I have small arms. I have some use of my small arms. So what do you do? And I had to literally push until I figured out how to change his diapers, how to dress him, how to modify his clothes. I modified them by having Velcro on his clothes, and how to get him in and out of his bed. So there's how to carry him. There's so many things. I just had to come up with different ways of doing things. And again, I was married at the time. My husband is deceased now. He died when Nicola was 5 years old. And so I was, after that time, a single mom with a disability. And those were tough times. I mean, you just, like every difficult journey really starts with putting one foot in front of the other. And that's what I had to do day by day by day. I couldn't even think about where I wanted to go. I just wanted to get through the day with Nicola, so he would not have a disadvantage because his mother is disabled.
Well, and of course, the issue is going back to what is really disabled, right?
Yeah.
And of course, we're not in the reality of it all. We again have this concept of a disability, but so does everyone. So you made the decision that you were going to find ways to accomplish the tasks that you needed to. And I would assume that if there was something that you really had difficulty doing, that you would enlist some help to get that done. But your goal was to make sure that you could do all the tasks that you needed to do.
Absolutely. And I really love what you just said. I made the decision. And that's it. Life is about choices. We're not just being thrown into life and allow the condition of our circumstances to decide for us. No, we make the choices, because that is so important. I see so many people, especially when I was a social worker, so many people just allowed circumstances to determine their life, their quality of life. So I made the decision. I mean, I love my son, and I would have done everything to this day. I will do anything for him. And if it means I have to come up with innovative ways, I did have some help from, for some reason, I remember she was a sister, like a Catholic type sister, who prepped little meals for Nicola, who helped maybe with the household chores, who gave him a bath, but that really didn't last very long. Maybe Nicola, when he was 1 year old, I was, and with my husband at the time, we were pretty much on our own. But I had a good rhythm. I had it figured out, because, again, push. That's just what we have to do. We have to take the decision to push.
Now, where were your parents in all of this at that time?
Oh, my parents were in Germany, and my father was a handful. He was brilliant, a scientist, but my mother had to take care of him like some of these brilliant people. And so she had her hands full with my dad, and my brother still lived at home at the time. So they came to visit, of course, but they just were not there, just right next door to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of figured that they stayed in Germany from the way you were describing it. On the other hand, they were grandma and grandpa, and did they spoil grandchild when they had the chance?
Oh my gosh, yeah, they are. I'm telling you,
it's a rule.
To the point of saying, "Mom, no."
It's a rule. That's what grandparents are supposed to do.
Absolutely. And today I'm a grandparent, and I do exactly the same thing. You know, they see it, they like it. Hey, grandma, can you buy it for us? Oh gosh.
And so you did that, and but it went on. Well, how did Nicola deal with, or did he ever come to the conclusion mom's different? And did you ever have discussions about that?
No, that's interesting because he grew up with me, and so he saw me from the first day of his life. He saw me every day, and I was just different. And he felt that because I held him with my legs instead of with my arms. And he felt, as a baby, I'm talking now, that his dad held him differently. But so it was not a big deal for him. And later on in my life, in his life, I should say, when he was maybe a teenager, when we met people and people said, oh, your mom is so amazing. And as a teenager, he rolls his eyes and says, yeah, whatever. She's just my mom. So it was not a big deal. He was, I'm just mom. So that's how my mom is. No big deal, right?
But he never came to you and said something like, Mom, you use your feet so much. How come you're not a very famous soccer player and earning us lots of money?
No. Oh, I wish. Maybe that would have been my career.
There you go. You see, now we're getting to it. Well, again, that's great. And
now that's my career path.
There you are. A new thing to explore. It's not too late. The thing is, though, that once again, it comes down to how you approached it, right? Mm-hmm. You didn't make it a big deal.
No.
That you didn't do things the same way your husband or later other people did. Mm-hmm. And your son recognized that. And I'm sure still clearly today does.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, I didn't make a big deal. When I raised Nicola, I was such a young mother, 21. And so I didn't think about it. All I wanted to do is raise my son, check that he has enough to eat, enough, love, of course, first, food, to drink, that he has everything, that he goes to kindergarten, that he goes to elementary school, and so on. I was so busy, so focused. And then I was also a full-time working mom. I was so focused on those things, I didn't even think for the longest time ever that I'm different, that my life definitely is different. I didn't have the time to think that.
So you approached life that way, which makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. And so now, is he in the U.S. today, or is he still in Europe, or what?
No, we came to America when he was 5 years. Yeah, when we were five, he was 5 years old, and
you were a free spirit.
I was a free spirit. Oh yeah, and I didn't even want to stay in America. It just kind of was kind of an accidental thing.
So that was 1988.
Yeah, and then it just happened, circumstances on top of the circumstances. I fell in love here in America because my husband, he had died at the time. Yeah. And so we just stayed, and that was not planned. And we came to love America, and we still love it to this day. So much that I became U.S. citizen in 2000, and my son just 1 year later in 2001. And my son is active duty military today. He is in the Army. He was, how do you call these people? Protective services for the, oh my gosh, I'm just, Mattis, Jim Mattis?
General
Jim
Mattis, uh-huh.
General Mattis, he was a security detail for him, and many other on top people. He never protected Donald Trump, but because he didn't have that clearance. But he was the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense. Several of them. They rotated in and out at that time quite a bit, and now he's working for the CID, which is the military
intelligence.
Yeah, exactly. And he's, I mean, if you see me, I'm a very small person and blonde, long hair, kind of hippie type still. I don't know how that happened that my son is in the army, but I'm proud of him. He took the path he thinks is working for him, and it seems to work for him. He's an officer now in the military, in the army, and I couldn't be more proud of him.
That is super. Well, how did so you came to America in 1988, and so you what were you doing for work once you came here?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Once I had that famous green card, I was allowed to work. Oh, yeah, but I got it. So I was allowed to work. I worked as a social worker, mainly with children who couldn't fit into mainstream school. It was through Job Corps. And also I worked for Very Special Arts. That's an organization that gives the means to people with disabilities, diverse disabilities, to produce art project and to keep them engaged. And that was a wonderful place to work in. And I also worked for Access Alaska because we used to live in Alaska at the time. Access Alaska that provided outdoor opportunities again for people with disabilities. So I love that work, and I hope I made a difference in there.
So you found things to do. Now, where do you live today?
Today, I just live outside of San Diego, in Southern California, where it's nice and warm.
What town?
Temecula.
Oh, Temecula.
Temecula, the wine country.
Yeah,
the wine country.
Southern California wine country.
Oh, it's so beautiful. Today, actually, we have a little bit cold day, and we actually did see some rain this morning. It's like, oh my gosh, mamma mia, there's a little bit rain here.
Where I live in Victorville, so we're about 130, 125 miles from you. We're having rain, and it's supposed to
rains
get up
there too. Huh?
Oh, it does sometimes. It's up on the desert, but it does rain sometimes.
Right. So I think I drove through there a while back. I know where Victorville is. I was just going to say, isn't that high desert?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
On the way to Las Vegas is what most people would remember Victorville
exactly. By. That's how I remember it too.
We even occasionally get snow. Mostly we don't. We're in a valley, so the snow goes around us. But still, we get some. But it's supposed to get up to 58 Fahrenheit today. So you guys have it warmer down there. We lived in Vista for 6 years and love it.
Oh, yeah.
So you worked, and what kind of things happened in your life? You mentioned something about, I think, May 17th, 2012?
Yeah, May 17, 2012, because I will always remember that date. What happened on May 17, 2012, I had a near-death experience. And it really, truly, I just barely survived. I suffered a massive stroke while I was driving my car. A massive stroke is terrible, but while you are driving your car, it's probably one of the worst places you can have a stroke. And not that there is ever a good place to have a stroke, but that's what was happening to me. And only to the grace of our higher power, I survived, because I had a passenger that day with me. And that passenger never really rides with me. So that day I had a passenger with me who grabbed in the last second the steering wheel. And that's a reason why we did not crash through the guardrail into the Rio Grande River. It happened in northern New Mexico, a very isolated mountain road. And that in itself was very challenging. And that's why the damage of my stroke was so extensive, because there was no cell phone reception. And it was very, very hard to get help. And I barely made it to the live flight down to Albuquerque, where they finally, almost 3 hours later, could give me the drug TPA, which is a blood clot busting drug. I was just barely still in that window, because I think there used to be a window of 3 hours. I just barely qualified for it, but my brain suffered pretty extensive damage.
Did you basically completely recover from that, or is there still damage?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's still a little bit damage. I couldn't walk. I could not talk. I could not use my left foot for all daily tasks. And it took me 1 year of physical, occupational, and speech therapy. And it was, thankfully I knew what push means. Persevere until I took that first step. That first step was such a monumental victory. And that first word, you don't hear anything anymore. Once in a while, I stumble over a word, very rarely, but I had to really work on my speech with a speech therapist for the longest time. But thanks to good therapists and my own stubbornness, I am fully independent again, and I'm still driving my non-modified car.
Cool. My wife is a paraplegic in a wheelchair, so our car is modified. It has hand controls.
Oh, okay.
But she drives well, so
yeah, right.
That helps.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they won't let me drive, and I really am offended by that. Given the way most people drive around here, I don't see a problem. But
No, isn't that true? Come down to the Temecula area, you really see some monkeys here on at the steering wheel. I mean, they just pass you regardless, even on the right, on the shoulder, whatever. So,
oh yeah, they do it up here, or they honk until you move out of their way. And
absolutely,
it's crazy. Driving has not become very courteous anymore.
No, definitely not.
So you tell me more about push, the concept, and what you've done with it, and so on.
And that's a really good question. That's the essence of my coaching program. That's the essence of when I'm a keynote speaker. Because after my stroke, I realized what an incredible second chance I have been offered here, that I have to make my life definitely count. And I want to help people to push through the adversity and use that adversity as reframe the adversity into meaningful opportunities, because I believe that everybody in themselves has the opportunity to rebuild their lives, regardless of what adversity is. And you said it so well earlier, it is a choice to rebuild your life. When you fall down, you get up. And that's what push hopefully teaches people. I built a push survival guide. And in that survival guide, there's 6 push survival skills. And that's what I teach. It's a step-by-step program I walk people through, because I believe that every single journey starts with one step. And you know what it starts with before even the one step? It starts with hope. Mm-hmm. Because if you do not have hope, you cannot take that first step. And I remember what my thinking was once I realized I cannot walk anymore. Oh my gosh, I was always so super active, very sports oriented, and I cannot walk again. But I was definitely, absolutely dedicated to take that one step, because I had hope that one day I will walk again.
And then you had the hope and did what?
I took the first step. And that's what I tell people, that this was a stroke recovery, but it's also, it can serve as whatever adversity you have in your life, you have. Once you found the hope that you will recover from that you will turn it into a meaningful opportunity. You take that first step. One thing I've really thought a lot about, and it's part of my push program, is we really have to watch that voice inside of our head, because it either will chatter to you, it won't happen, it can't happen, I'm going to be able to do that, I'm bad at this. We really have to watch our inner voice, our inner talk, because we are the most influential voice in our lives. Because we become, and you know that, we become what we believe. And if I believe I'm never going to be a good runner, I'm running also. If I believe I'm not a good runner, well, guess what? What's going to happen? So I'm really talking a lot about watching that inner voice. And as I said earlier, decisions, not your conditions or circumstances, ultimately determine your destiny.
Well, of course.
And that's how I work with people, to really put them on that way. And one of the things also, I help people to figure out their why. Because if you don't know your why, all your efforts kind of just out there in the world are just going left, right, straight, up, down, up and down, sideways. You really have to figure out your why. My why I wanted to recover, of course, the obvious reasons. I wanted to talk again, I wanted to walk again, but I really took the stroke experience as a wake-up call that I need to make a difference and assist people in changing their lives. And that was my why, my motivator to work extraordinarily hard.
Of course, there is, you mentioned the voice that's always discouraging you. Mm-hmm. The other voice is there if we let it come through, which is the one that gives you hope or encourages hope, and then also says, yes, you can.
Absolutely, absolutely. But, I don't know if you talked about that before. I'm a member of a couple of Toastmaster clubs. Yeah, mm-hmm. A program for leadership and just speaking, giving better speech and communication. And you wouldn't believe how often I hear, well, I can't give a speech. I can't because I'm not a good speaker. We need to turn that thinking around. Maybe I'm not a good speaker yet. Maybe I cannot give yet that excellent keynote speech. And it just takes, it's a mindset. It's, like you said, an unstoppable mindset. And that really ties in with your show. That's why I was so compelled to come on your show, because I like that unstoppable mindset.
I've had a number of people who have indicated an interest in being guests on Unstoppable Mindset, but they say, I'm not a speaker. I wouldn't be a good guest because I'm not a speaker. Mm-hmm. And it's so hard to get them to understand, I don't care. And our listeners don't care if you're a good speaker or not. No. Mm-hmm. The issue is, do you have a story and are you willing to tell it? Because if you're talking about the things you know about, your speaking is going to be excellent anyway. And that's what really matters. I think that all too often we're taught not to have confidence, and that's the real problem. I know that many times I read and hear about one of the biggest fears of all time is public speaking. And for me, it hasn't been. And I realize as I think about it that it's a problem for most people because they've been conditioned to believe that way, rather than recognizing that in reality, they're probably talking a lot better than they think they are.
Yeah, I think so too. We have to look at here being on your podcast. I mean, we're kind of having coffee. It feels like you have your coffee over there in Victorville. I have my coffee over here in Temecula, and it's like chatting over coffee. It's not a big deal. And I don't know what else to say. When we convince ourselves we can't, for the longest time I was walking around saying, oh, well, I'm really bad at math. Oh, I cannot add 2 and 2. Well, guess what? That's what happened. I'm not good at math because I just believed I can't do it. Today, if I really have to add stuff up, I really can. It just, make the choice to believe in yourself and turn off that inner voice which sits on your shoulder and says, it won't happen. It can't happen. It's, yeah. And that's really so important.
And you just said it right. Turn off that voice. And
turn it off.
You have the control over whether that voice is allowed to be a part of your life or not. And it doesn't need to be. Were you a coach before your stroke? What did you do before having the stroke?
I was a social worker and psychologist. So in a lot of ways, I was a coach, but not formally, not like I'm now. I mean, I have my credentials as a social worker and especially in psychology. But I coach people, of course, every single day I did, but I didn't see it as a coach. And my love is for speaking. Everybody can hear it. I love to speak. And so my love is for speaking, but I also love helping people change. Oh my gosh, my English, change their lives. With the tools I give them through that six-step survival tips and the push survival guide. And there's so many things. The survival tips, they consist of hope, positive mindset, reframing, courage, resilience, and guess what? Perseverance. Yep. And that's what I'm coaching people in.
Were you, when you had the stroke and so on, and you had a lot of challenges, were you afraid? Did you exhibit or experience a lot of fear?
No, I did not, because I was so in la-la land that for the longest time, for a week, I was in the neuro-intensive care unit, which is a long time in the neuro-intensive care unit. No, I wasn't afraid. Things just floated by me.
How about later when you started to wake up and realize I can't walk and I can't talk and so on?
I was more surprised. I think I was just more surprised because I was this healthy person, 50-year-old person. And how can I go from this healthy, very sporty person and who eats well, who eats organic, who does all the right things, to somebody who cannot walk, who cannot talk? I was more surprised. The reason why I was not afraid, maybe there were moments of fear once in a while here and there, but the reason why I was not particularly fearful was because I knew I would recover. That was just not if I recover, it was when. It is a question of when.
And that was the leap. I asked the question because I see fear all around us in so many ways. So many people are afraid. And as I say it, they become blinded by fear. And I know that for me, being in the World Trade Center, I had created, as I've said on this podcast and in speeches I've given, I created and didn't even know it at first, a mindset about what to do in the case of an emergency in the World Trade Center, because I got training. I trained myself and I learned what I needed to do. I've never taught people to deal with fear, even though it's all around us. And we had so many examples of it, and we can see so many examples of it. So we're now writing a new book. It'll be out probably not next year, but the year after, where I'm going through the first draft of it now. But it will be all about talking about the subject of being afraid. And the reality is that you can learn to control fear and make it a positive influence in your life, not something that tears you down. So it goes back to that same, which voice do you want to listen to?
Correct. Yeah. And I love that. And it really comes all down to choices. Do I want to listen to that voice which sits on my left shoulder, telling me all kinds of crazy stuff? Or do I just want to listen to my voice who says, Sabine, this might be difficult. Some people might say you can't, but who cares? Really quick, because I know we really have to end here pretty soon. On the 7th anniversary of my stroke survival date, I decided to be part of the Los Angeles Marathon. And for your listeners and viewers who don't know how long a marathon is, it's crazy long, 26.2 miles. That's an enormous amount of, but guess what? I trained because I really wanted to show that even somebody who recovered from a stroke, who does not have arms, believes in herself that I can finish the Los Angeles Marathon. And in March of 2019, I finished the Los Angeles Marathon.
How long did it take?
You don't want to know. I think 6 hours or something.
Look, I've talked to people who took a lot longer than that.
Yeah, it was kind of a trot. It was not a run because you have to pace yourself on such a long distance. And I still ran a couple or more half marathons, which is still 13 miles. And to this day, I'm still training, running, and I'm spinning, the stationary bikes. And because it just, will I run another marathon? Probably. It would surprise me. But I just believe in just exploring where our boundaries even are, what can we do in life? Because I believe all of us can do so much more than we think we can. And in the end, as a closing thought, I think what I what I have discovered on this journey is really, I would like to encourage your listeners to think, what is the legacy we leave behind? What is a legacy for our children, grandchildren, or people who are close to us? How do you want them to remember us? And I want to be remembered as a person who could push through adversity, who made a lot of difference in other people's lives. That's what I want to be remembered for. When one day I'm gone, my son hopefully remembers that, and my grandchildren.
How old are your grandchildren, by the way?
Oh, they are 3, 6, and 9 years old.
And
actually, the little one
turned.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Actually, my little guy, Kiwi, his name is Kiwi, like the fruit, Kiwi. He turns 4 tomorrow. November 3rd. Yay.
Well, tell him happy birthday for us. Do they live near you? Do they live near you?
No, unfortunately not, being military.
Yeah.
My son is sent anywhere and everywhere. Right now they're at the East Coast in North Carolina. But I spent 5 or 6 weeks with them this summer. And my son is hoping to be stationed in Europe, Germany or Belgium. So I'm kind of hoping that, although it's a long ways to fly for me, but, Europe is always in my heart, and I go over to Europe as often as I possibly can.
If you can run a marathon, you can fly to Europe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You bet.
Well, you talk a lot about push. Tell us maybe some tips that our listeners can use to push through their own adversities and deal with challenges they have in their lives, if you would.
Absolutely. And I think I mentioned them throughout the program, but I will summarize them again, that I believe every single difficult journey starts with hope. If you don't have hope, then it is kind of difficult to start a journey. And then you take the first step, even if it's a baby step, like the marathon. Where do you start 26.2 miles? You start with one single step. You put the one foot in front of the other. So that's what we start on. And then the voice, we talked a lot about that nasty, nagging voice, what you can't do and what can't happen. Turn that voice off. And it's a habit. I still sometimes hear this crazy voice. Well, Sabine, you really can't do it. You can't do it. Shut up. That's what I literally say.
I do too.
I see actually the stop sign, the red stop sign. I stop and I see in front of my eyes the stop sign. And that really helps, because visualizing stop is really helpful. And then, of course, discover your why. And how you do that, think about, what are you passionate about? What are you good at? And how do you want to contribute to other people? Don't think so much about the money. How much money can I make it with it? Sure, money is important, but think, how can you change people's lives? How can you contribute to humankind? And that is your why. And I have the gift of talk, so I use my gift to make a difference in other people. And then, of course, I already brought it up. I'm really, really very set on the legacy we are leaving behind. And what I have done, this is crazy, and I have helped other people to do it, is write my own eulogy. And that sounds kind of like, oh, why do you write your own eulogy? The reason why, when I write, I want people to read that when I'm dead. And there's still so many things in there, like writing a book. So I better get off my butt to write that book. I find writing our own eulogy very inspiring. So we can live up to that image people will read about at our funeral, or a celebration of life. I prefer that. So it's very inspiring to people to do that, so they really see where they still need to change things in their lives. That's a short.
I was just going to ask you if you've written a book. So that is something for you to work on and let us know about when it gets written and published.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm working very hard on, I'm writing it myself, but also with the assistance of some people who know what they're doing, because that's one of my secrets. Get help when you need help. Mm-hmm. Writing, I love writing. I think I'm fairly good at it, but I know I need some help with that. So I surround myself with people who can give me that help. And that's very important. That's one of the big steps. You really need to realize your weaknesses and then surround yourself with people who can help you, literally.
Well, I absolutely agree with that and wholeheartedly endorse it, and believe that it's all about teaming, and there's nothing wrong with teaming with other people to get things done. How can people reach out to you and learn more about your coaching program, and maybe reach out to you to see how you may be able to work with them and help them?
Absolutely. So my website is Sabin Becker Speaks. SabinBeckerSpeaks.com. And you can go on my website. Can you spell that?
Sabin is?
Yes. SABINE, B like boy, BECKER, Speaks, SPEAKS.com. Speaks. SabinBeckerSpeaks.com. If you would type in Sabin Becker or no arms, probably would come up if that's any easier. Or even Sabin. I Googled myself just to see how I come up. I think I Googled myself, Sabin, no arms, and I came up fairly on the top of a Google search. And if you go, I have a free gift for your viewers and listeners. If you go on that website, there's a button which says download free, like capitalized free, push survival guide. And it gives you an overview of the 6 push survival skills. And that I would like to offer that to your listeners, because I think it's so important to take the choices to really reframe our adversity into beautiful opportunities.
And how can people take advantage then of your coaching program? Is there a way they can sign up or reach out to you?
Yes, good question. There's another button, a couple of buttons, and it is really highly visible. They're like gold type of buttons, big. It says schedule a free 30-minute call with Sabin, and it's, again, totally free. You can sign up for discovery calls, or we can see how I can help you best reaching your personal goals in life.
There you go. Well,
Yay.
Sabin, I want to thank you very much for being here with us today.
Mhm.
A lot of inspiration, a lot of interesting things to think about. And I do have one more question. What do you do every day to keep your mindset active? Do you analyze what you do at the end of the day or anything like that? Do you meditate or anything like that to reinforce what you do?
I probably should meditate. Like, I'm this very, very focused person. But just a little bit over a year ago, I always wanted to learn Italian ever since I was in high school, because I travel every year to Italy and I never know the language. So last year I started to use to learn Italian, and now I'm considered an intermediate speaker because I do it every day. And I have groups I can practice with through Duolingo. And that gives me kind of the relax that I need from this constant business, this constant being on a camera, this constant research, this constant networking. I love to learn a new lesson, a new language, and that keeps the mind active like nothing else can. Learning is something new.
Learning is always cool, and it's good to learn new things. And also, one of the things that we're putting in our book about fear is step back at least at the end of the day and look at the day and what went well, what didn't go well, and what went well, how do you make it better, what didn't go well. Don't be angry or upset about it. How do you move forward from it, which is pushing forward.
Push. Absolutely. And that's what I'm thinking. Don't beat yourself up, because some things just won't turn out. Sometimes I go to these meetings and I don't get a contact, or I say something wrong, whatever. And it happens to me too. And I don't beat myself up. It's just a learning experience. And we need to move forward. Don't listen to that ugly voice in your head. Move forward step by step and have hope.
Absolutely. Well, Sabin, again, thank you for being here. And I want to thank you for listening, you out there. And we really appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed what Sabin has to say. I have, but I'm prejudiced. I get to do the interviews, but I hope that you have. And Sabin, for you and you listening, if you have any guests that you think we ought to talk with, please let us know. Reach out. We'd love to hear from you. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about today's episode. You can reach me at Michael, MICHAELHI, at accessibe, ACCESSIBE.com, or visit www.michaelhingson.com/podcast. And wherever you're listening, please give us a 5-star rating. We really appreciate the ratings that you give, especially when they're nice ones, but we want your input either way. And I'd love it if you'd email me and let me know your thoughts. So we hope that you'll do that. And I didn't ask, Sabin, do you have a podcast?
Not yet. Not
something
yet.
to work on.
That's one of the kinds of things I still want to accomplish in my life. That and the book, those are the big ones, definitely. But every day, step by step, and full of hope.
Absolutely. Well, Sabin, thank you once again for being with us. And we want you to come back whenever you want. And
absolutely.
Let's continue the discussions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael. This was awesome. I love that unstoppable mindset of yours. And that Michael is a cool dude.